You know, there's so many times that I go to a really well-made website, and for some reason, their login page for that website is the generic ones that come from WordPress or WooCommerce. Now, I can understand that some people just don't know how to make them. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to make one. The plugins I'm going to be using is Elementor Pro and PowerPack Pro for Elementor. I'm using Elementor Pro because there's certain features that I want to be using to stylize my page, but you don't actually need to use it if you don't want to. The second plugin I'm going to be using is PowerPack Pro for Elementor. This is a plugin that I like to use a lot. I'm not sponsored by them in any way. I'm using this plugin because I like the widgets it has for login and registration. So let's get started. So with this plugins installed, the first thing you're going to do is actually create the page. We head over to pages and we're going to say add new. All we need in this page for now is just the name. So I'm going to call it my login page. Then I'm going to click publish. Once it's published, then I head over to edit with Elementor. Now that Elementor is loaded, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this my login page. In order to do that, I go down to the bottom left to the settings icon. Click on that, and then I'm going to say hide title. If you like to have the title, then keep it. It's just for me in this design, I'm going to remove the title. The first thing I'm going to need in my design is a section. Now I want the section to be full screen. So in order to do that, I go and say add a section with the one column. In the layout settings of this section, I'm going to say that it's full width. I want no gap. I want it stretched. And I want the height to say fit screen, so that on every device, it's the full screen of that device. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to advanced, and I'm going to go and minus out the top margin that is the header of this website. The reason why I'm doing that is because the section is set to the full screen. It takes the pixel count of the screen, but doesn't minus out the header and the footer. You have to do that yourself. You don't need to do this. It's just nice to not have the scroll bar on the side. So now for me, I minused out 85 pixels for this. And what that does is it just puts this whole section just on top of the header. So it fits nicely into this viewport. Now that I'm happy with this, I'm going to head over to style. And then the background, I'm going to set the background color to black. And then background overlay, I'm going to set this to a picture. Now I'm doing it this way because in background overlay you have CSS filters that you can actually blur the image, and that's what I'm after. Otherwise, if I didn't want that in this design, I just put the background as a picture and then just call it a day. Here in background overlay, I'm going to click on image. So I select the picture I want. In this case it's the city. I'm going to say insert picture. Now the picture's inserted, I want the position to be center, attachment fixed, repeat none, size cover, and there's our picture. So now the opacity, I want it set to about a 3, so it's nice and dark. And here in CSS filters, here is where I can put the blur, and I'm going to set this blur to about 3.5. Now that takes care of the background. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an inner section to this. I'm going to drag it and put it in the middle. I'm going to get rid of the second column. The reason why I'm doing that is because I'm not going to put the registration over here. This is going to be a dedicated page to login only. I'm going to make another one for registration after this. Okay, so now that I have the section dragged in, I'm going to click on the section settings. I'm going to keep it as boxed, and the width I'm going to set it to 650 pixels, and that should take care of the width on the desktop and on mobile. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the column icon itself. Now I'm going to do the styling of this column directly onto the column and not onto the section. So now we head over to style. Now here in style you can see that I don't have the option of background overlay. The reason why it's like that is because there is no background as such. So in order to get to the background overlay, a trick to do is to click on the color and then just make the color completely transparent. So now it's still transparent and nothing there, but now we have the background overlaid so we can use the CSS filters and all the extra options that are there. Now I do want this because there's an opacity setting that I need to use for my design, and it's just not available in the background. So here in the background overlay, I'm going to create a gradient. I'm going to set 2 different types of purple. Now that I'm happy with those, I'm going to set the opacity to about a 70. Now in order to see that, I'm just going to put a space widget there so you can see what's going on. But you can see that the columns are actually blurry here. So it's taking the CSS styling from the bigger section as a whole. So what we want to do is we actually go to background overlay. In its own CSS filters, we just make sure the blur is 0. So now you can see that the borders are straight lines again. Okay, so now we're going to head over to the styling of the border. Now I want the border radius to be 10, and then I want the box shadow to be nice and black with a vertical of 10 and a blur of 10. So now the next thing we're going to do is going to add the actual login widget. So we go click on this 9-dot icon, we type in login, here's a login form, drag that across, then I'm going to add another space underneath, and I'm going to duplicate the space again on top. I'm going to set both these spaces to about 25 and this bottom space at about a 30. So now let's do the settings of this login form. I'm going to keep the form labels the same. I'm making sure that Ajax is enabled. The button, I am happy with its name and its positioning. Now you can do reCAPTCHA and social login in this form. The only thing you need is the APIs from reCAPTCHA or Facebook or whatever you want to do for social logins. There'll be a different video I'll cover, as that's a little bit intensive. But for now, we're just going to leave those completely alone, and we're just going to do a normal standard login. The only real settings I want to change over here is actually under additional options. What I want is to redirect after login. I don't want them to stay on this page. So I'm going to click on redirect to login, and I'm going to click on a dynamic tag. I'm going to say I want them to go to the site URL. So what happens is once they've successfully logged in, they'll go into my home page. Now you can change this to whatever page you want, but in this example, I'm just going to keep it on the base URL. Now I'm happy with all the settings there. I'm going to affect the styling now. I'm going to click on style. I'm going to change all the text links to white and then the hover color to a light blue, just to make sure to my styling of light blue. There we go. The labels, the label color, I want to set to white. I want a little bit of spacing between them and actually the input fields. I'm happy with the typography of this, but you can change it here under label. With the fields, the only thing I'm going to change is actually the border radius. I'm going to actually add a 10 here, just to give it a style that I like. Next, I'm going to click on the button. The button border radius, I'm also going to be setting to a 10. The text color, I'm going to set to black. And then the background color, I'm going to set to white. I'm going to make sure that stays the same in the hover. And the only thing I'm going to add is just a box shadow on the hover here. So when you actually hover over it, you can see that you're actually pressing something. And then that's it for the settings of this login form. The next thing I'm going to do is add the site logo here, just to make this form look nicer. So I'm going to click on the 9-dot icon. I'm going to type out site logo and then drag that across in between the two spaces that I had put there. I'm going to make sure that's in the middle, and this is way too big for the site logo. So I'm going to click on custom, and I'm going to say the width is about 200 pixels. I'm going to apply it like that. I'm going to leave it as is. I don't have to put in the height. The height will just be automatic because I just want the width to be 200 pixels. And it fits nicely there because that's just the site logo. So every time you change the site logo for whatever reason, it'll just automatically apply to here. So you don't actually have to worry about re-editing this page. And there you go, there's my login form. Now I'm just going to do one more touch to this, and that's going to be an entrance animation. So I'm going to click on this column icon. I'm going to go into advanced motion effects, and I'm going to say zoom in. So every time this page loads, this login form just does a little zoom in there. And then once I'm happy with this page, I click update. And there's my login page. Now, if you want to keep your registration on the same page as your login, all you have to do is have the second column next to this, and you can do all the styling and whatever you want within that column. But for me, I like to have registration on a separate page. Extra work for me, but I like that sort of style. I like the styling here, and I want to have the registration to be the exact same thing, but the only difference being that the login widget is now going to be the registration widget. In order to do that, I'm going to hover over the update button of Elementor. I'm going to say save options. I'm going to say save as a template. So now I'm just going to give this template a name quick. I'm going to call this my login form temp template, so that I know when I'm finished designing the site, I don't need to keep this template that's taking up space in my database. So now that's saved, then I can go back to the dashboard. So now that we're back on the dashboard, let's go and create the page for our registration. Now in order to do that, we're going to pages and say add new. So here in the new screen, let's just add the page name quick. So I'm going to call this my registration. I'm going to click publish. So now that this page is published, let's just click edit with Elementor. So now that Elementor is loaded, let's take out the registration title quickly, which is the same thing we did in the login screen. So we head over to the settings icon and then we say hide title. Now it's gone. Now let's go and get that template that we made. So we click on this folder icon and we go my templates, and then we find our templates and we just say insert. And we say apply. So now it's applying the login template that we had created for the login page over here onto the registration. So now in this login widget, let's actually just delete this. And now we're going to look for the registration widget. And we click over and we drag that across, put it into the right place in between the spaces. And here's our registration widget. So now here under form fields, you do have the option to actually add other things like a first name, website, maybe confirm their password, other field options that you can actually select here. But for this example, I'm just going to keep it to the username, email, and password. Normally, I'd actually add the first name as well. The register button, I'm going to keep the same. I'm going to keep the text the same as well, but you can obviously change this to whatever you'd like. Again, the reCAPTCHA, you actually have to get the API and then put that into Elementor. But for now, we're just going to leave reCAPTCHA. The actions after registration, I'm going to say send an email. I'm going to say redirect, and I'm going to say auto login. And then for the redirect, I'm going to say the site URL. Then here you have the option of saying what you want inside the email notification. You can customize the message after registration as well for your success. In additional options, you can set the user role. So over here, I'm just going to say as a customer, I'm going to say the login and the last password options underneath. Now you can select the login page that you created, but I'm going to keep it default because the next video you're going to see is me making custom code to actually make WordPress change the default pages for login and registration across the site completely, and that includes the admin login screen. So now that I'm happy with the settings, I'm going to head over to the styling, and I'm going to make the same styling as I did for the login page. The links color, I'm going to set it to white. The hover color, I'm going to set it to that blue again. The labels, I'm going to set to white. The input fields, I'm going to leave as is except for the radius. I'm going to set it to 10. Then the registration button, I'm going to put the radius as 10. I'm going to change the colors completely. I'm going to say the text color is black. The background is white. And then the hover, the same thing. The logged in message, I'm just going to keep this as white in case that they see it. So the success and the fail, I'm going to keep standard. And that's it. That's our registration page. Much quicker than the login because we use the template over and it keeps all the settings the same. And now we're happy with that, we just say update. And there you go. You have a custom made login page and registration page for your website. Now don't forget, in the next video, I'm going to show you how to use these pages as the default pages for WordPress. But as they are right now, you can just add them to your navigation and they'll work perfectly. And with that, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.